What is up, YouTube? Amanda here, and Dom is actually with me, which I'm pretty excited to have him here on the channel. Finally, I was telling him today that a lot of people ask me to have him on this channel, but he's a busy guy, guys. He's a busy
I'm
guy.
happy to, of course.
Yeah, but anyway, so I am testing here a new camera. You guys are pretty used to seeing me with great editors from Roderick, from Steven, but we're trying something new so you guys can get a little bit more of the feeling of, the information that we can pass to you guys here in my house, the information that we are going to pass during the shows. We are flying to New York on Tuesday. Today is Sunday. And I want to get a little bit of the information for you guys to see what a peak week looks like. You guys already saw a little bit in Chicago, saw a little bit in Atlanta. We are doing things a little bit differently this time. This prep, I was actually telling Dom, and I keep telling him over and over again, this prep has been the best for me in terms of how I feel. My energy levels were not as of a roller coaster as it was last year. And I think it's just because of a better mind state too that I am in this prep. Last prep was the very first time that I truly did a prep with Dom, because when Dom and I met each other, we worked for just about, I would say,
10 weeks.
10 weeks before my show in Omaha. And of course, now we had a whole year off, an off season that we did together. And then we presented the package, completely different package, if you guys follow me, last year. So I had a little bit of, emotions coming to the prep, really thinking, did I make any changes? Because in my mind, all that I had was the image of my last presentation. So I couldn't really picture what the off season did to me, because when you are in off season, you're looking at your body and you're not really seeing much improvements besides, the improvements that you do as an athlete, eating all of your meals. So for example, I would skip a lot of meals during my off season previously. And with Dom, I was never skipping meals. My training progress got so much better. So I could see the progress of an overall attitude of a true professional athlete, but I couldn't truly see in the physique yet, because Dom was always reminding me, you're not going to see it until we lean out a little bit. You're not going to see it until you start getting to X weeks out. And when I saw it, when I saw it after the pictures on stage, I was like, okay, we can definitely do some magic as long as I keep doing everything that you're telling me to do and keep believing in myself and keep doing the things. A little bit of autopilot. And I don't like to say autopilot because I'm not the kind of athlete. I like to put thought into the things that I do. And I like to also question, but not to question to challenging him, but to learn, especially because now I'm working under him as a coach as well. And I have my people in the clinic. So I want to learn a little bit of the science behind it. So I ask him a lot of questions, but it's also important, and he reminds me that too, to go a little bit autopilot so I don't get too overwhelmed either during the process. So he always says something that really sticks to me, and I love that saying. He says, I'm the head, you're the body, so I guide you.
But with any client coaching relationship, you always explain it as the client or the athlete, they are essentially the captain of the ship. And as the coach, it's your job to be the co-pilot to guide them in the right direction. And, I tell people, and with certain bigger decisions in terms of like show selection, things like that, that's ultimately up to the main decision of the athlete. I will tell them like my recommendations on things, whether, it's somebody that has been to the Olympia before, it's this timing, you're doing a show and then it's 11 weeks out from the Olympia. Sometimes strategically that might not be the best idea. And I lay out the pros and cons for them and then let them make, the decision from there. And then we'll structure things accordingly and we'll support whatever it is that they wish to do, as long as it's something that's not like detrimental to their health or anything along those lines. And that's having a good, healthy coaching to client relationship. Communication is a huge variable in that, that you're having good communication, because essentially, the more information the coach has, the better that they can do do their job.
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me, I am eating. I'm actually eating my pre-workout. I'm going to be hitting legs. Today is going to be my last leg day before we go to the stage. So it's a very important day for me today. I don't want to take too much long here, but I think the point that of this video too is just to go over a few things that people keep asking me a lot about the prep in general, because I keep mentioning so much that it was one of my best in terms of energy. And I think a lot of athletes out there, they don't do this um, full as a full career because they have other responsibilities too. So I think it's important for them to grab a few information of what could be done during prep, which don't get me wrong, you're going to have ups and downs of energy. That's very normal. But what can be done to really allow the athletes to have the responsibilities outside of the prep and still perform at a high level in the gym? So we're going to be hitting a few important points here, and then I'm going to get going to the gym. And then potentially we're going to finish up this video with more information for you guys later on today. But let me get some, I'm going to ask some questions to Dom that you guys actually asked me. And then we're going to go through a few questions and then I'm going to get going. All right. So I do have some questions that it came from some comments on posts, but mostly like DMs from stories.
Mm-hmm.
People want to know a little bit more of the strategy of off season, going to a recomp and then going to a prep. I speak a lot about that on my YouTube, and I did have some questions coming from people. I don't think it's very quite common to see a prep separated into a whole year project, as because many people have the idea that a prep is only 12 weeks out or 10 weeks out.
No, by no means. I mean, and with bodybuilding, it's one of those things where we're consistently working 365 days a week. There's not really one phase that's more important than another. It's just the goal settings change when you go from one phase to another. And when you're in, quote unquote, a recomposition phase. And again, those can be structured entirely different depending on the person, whether it's a female, a male, if it's a post-cycle or fertility post-cycle phase. But essentially a recomposition phase is your time to focus on optimizing all of your health markers, your insulin sensitivity, and your metabolism. You're essentially priming the body to be in the most optimal place to respond to the next phase it is that you're going to, whether it's a lean tissue, an off-season phase or a prep phase. You want to be in the most optimal place to respond. And typically, like whatever phase it is, you want it to be one, you want to have your body fat in a good place. Because during a recomp, you're off all the PEDs. And during that phase, you're not focusing on necessarily slapping on slabs of tissue. So it's good to have your body fat in an optimal range. So when you transition into the next phase, you can then go ahead and start to increase your food and be in an optimal place to start that next phase on a high amount of food. And then from there, at the end of a recomp, we usually will send people for very specific sets of blood work and sometimes cardiovascular tests, which with all of our clients in their folders, we have them go for certain sets of blood work every 3 to 4 months. Cardiovascular tests, which I have certain guidelines for them for a calcium score for anyone that's been using PEDs for a certain amount of time or above a certain age, or depending on their family history. So we send them for the labs at the end of the recomp. Then from there, we could establish a true baseline of where their health and hormonal markers are. And from that, we could use that valuable information to map out the next phase as effectively as possible. You can see things on there in terms of their insulin sensitivity, how to program their food. And then from there, it's to set you up for the most success going into that next phase. And the thing I preach to Amanda and everybody all the time, I tell them, when somebody is on stage, what's going to dictate how you look on stage, how dominant you are, and how your body responds the last 6 to 8 weeks is what you were doing, 4 to 8 months prior. So everything is all set up to put you in the most optimal place to respond.
All right. So there was another question here too that I'm just gonna recap. What is the strategy when it comes to prep phase? So we see a lot of coaches out there that just put clients on endless low carb day. Is that a way that it's has to be like athletes? I mean, I already know the answer, but I recall the question. Do athletes need to be low carb? What are the downfalls of being low carb? You and I speak about that all the time because
Mhm.
I tell you all the time. I don't know how can people live. It doesn't matter what type of body. It can be a body that people usually say, "Oh, I don't work too well with carbs. I need to lower carbs to lose weight." It doesn't matter. When you're a low carb, you do not perform.
If you're a hypertrophy athlete, of course, like glycogen is your first body's form of fuel. So of course, so when you start a prep, typically, if you're starting off in a pretty good place, you want to be in a place where you can start on a decent amount of food, where you're not in an extreme deficit right off the rip at 15, 16 weeks out. If you do that, what's going to end up happening is, remember, our body's first reaction is to adapt to whatever environment or stimulus it's in. If you go ahead and just slam someone into a major deficit right away in the beginning of prep, then once you get to, the 6 week out, 7 week out marker, that body is going to end up hitting a wall where you're going to stall. So typically you want to go ahead, start the prep on, by that point, if you're working with the person, you have a good idea of where their like basal metabolic rate is. So you want to start them off at X amount and then slowly start cutting them down. And as you're getting closer, some people, everyone's body is totally different. Some people have to be cut down a little bit more. But one philosophy that I personally like kind of live by from, the 14 years experience I've been doing this is I never ever deplete from a particular macronutrient group for an extended period of time. So if you look at some coaches,
Oh, we have a crazy dog.
Get down,
trying
Vito.
to say hi.
If you look at certain coaches have different diet philosophies. So there's some that do like very low fat because fats are the most calorically dense. There's some that do very low carbs. But what ends up happening then, baby, you want me to give him a bone?
All right, picking back up from Mr. Vito.
Yep. So one of the strong like philosophies and something that I'm an advocate of, where you'll see a lot of coaches that they have different kind of like diet philosophies. Like my good friend Matt Porter, like rest in peace. What he would do is he would do very, very low fats, and because they're the most calorically dense, and there's some coaches that just do very low carbs. So I'm a big advocate of never removing a particular macronutrient group for an extended period of time. So whether I have somebody doing some sort of carb cycle where, let's say if they're doing, 3 days of moderate carb, like low fat, then 1 day of fat load on their non-workout day, but low carb, I'll never go more an extended period of time, typically not more than 4 days of depleting from one of those groups. And what people will notice is when they're in some sort of a deficit or pre-contest phase and they're doing that, they typically will have really bad rebounds after a show. Because then what happens is your body it adapts and it goes into that survival type mode. So then when you do start introducing those foods, your body is kind of like in that survival mode where it doesn't utilize it as a fuel source, and it's more likely to grab it and hold on to it. You have those metabolic adaptations. So that's something that, I'm a big advocate of. And again, making sure that somebody is metabolically in the best place going into prep is going to dictate how smooth that prep goes. Because when you get clients, the worst situation is when you get a client, they reach out, and a lot of times I'll try to avoid working with anyone that's in this circumstance when they're close to a show under like 10 weeks, and they've already been in a severe deficit, hammering cardio, blasting all the accessories like, your Clen, your fat burners, T3, all those things, because then at that point you're stuck dealing with a shot metabolism. And that person, you may have to go through extremes with, the diet and whatever it may be to get them to the end goal and get them in optimal stage condition.
So another question that I have here is the importance of supplements during a prep, but I think you're a supplement guy regardless. If you're on prep or not on prep, just particular supplements that you like to introduce. Let's focus a little bit more on prep now. So particular supplements that are important for prep, and if that's something that it's individual for each athlete, or it's just a basic essential for everybody.
It's a great question. So I think in any phases that there are certain basic essentials that everybody should be taking, like essential fatty acids, a good vitamin D, D3, K2, but in prep in particular, ones that are and do become way more important. Number one is a soluble fiber supplement. Why? Especially too, if you're in a deficit and you're lowering your carbs, your body is lacking that essential fiber. And you'll notice too that a lot of times their digestion and their bowel movements won't be the same when they're in prep. They'll be going because they'll be a lot more constipated because they're lacking this. And plus, the soluble fiber also has prebiotics. It's going to help feed, the good bacteria. Another one too that becomes a little more important prep, but this one should be taken all year round for pretty much anyone that's eating, anything from a gram of protein per pound to body weight or more is betaine HCl pepsin. This is for optimal levels of stomach acid. When people complain of like heartburn, acid reflux, it's most likely has something to do with stomach acid. And by taking the betaine HCl, you're allowing your body to excrete stomach acid on its own so that you can break down, your protein and have, optimal digestion. So those are just two right off the rip. You could take other supplements that help, support fat burning, like L-carnitine, things along those lines. And then from there, the supplements will get a little more individualized depending on the person, their blood work. A thing that Amanda and I this year got big into was doing a DNA testing. And I think that she could, attest to this, that the information that we got from that was, definitely very, very beneficial.
Yeah, we introduced a good
mitochondrial support,
B complex, vitamin C, vitamin E. There were a really good amount of supplements that I never taken before that came from the DNA test.
A lot of them you were taking, but we just needed to take
extra
higher amounts, higher amounts of it. And, that really, really was beneficial because with the DNA testing, when people refer to the word genetics, that doesn't just mean, who's got a small waist, a good lat to waist ratio. It also refers to how well your body metabolizes these different hormones, and, what are you pre-exposed to? Because everyone's dealt a certain genetic hand when we're born. There's nothing that's changing that. So I think it's mind-baffling that not everyone would want to see what that genetic hand is. So from us learning that, we know different things, how we need to individualize the programming with the supplements a little more individualized. And for you and even for me, I feel a lot better that we're focusing on that.
I think the last one that we're going to do now before I go training is hormonal replacement therapy. So, of course, that's something that we do. We've been doing that for quite some time now. I think a lot of people have mistaken thinking that's something that it's, testosterone is something that should not be given to a woman. But of course, when we speak in the bodybuilding community, the dosages are extremes and they're not done correctly, potentially not the right type, or not along with helping the free testosterone too with DHEA and pregnenolone. But just let's touch a little bit about the importance of checking estradiol, progesterone for females in particular, and then testosterone for the female as well. And then just moving up from female to male, just to touch quickly.
Yeah. So again, these are useful tools that you have in the toolbox if they are necessary. It's not something that I go to like right away. And I've had a lot of younger competitors that I've actually strayed away from that are in, they're in their 20s. And what you really want to be able to do to make the best decisions, you want to create a baseline. And the only way to really do that too is when you're done with one of these recomps, or if you have somebody that does like any sort of like a post-cycle phase, after they're done with that and they're not on anything, you want to go ahead and do certain labs so you could establish a true baseline to see exactly where it is that their baseline's at. Then from there, you could kind of make those decisions accordingly. If it's an older woman that's, premenopausal, they're having different sorts of symptoms, whether it's vaginal dryness, having UTIs, having all your staple symptoms, and then you're seeing too on a cellular level that they're also have very low levels of estradiol, then it's much, much more beneficial, even from an overall health standpoint, to optimize those hormones into physiological ranges. And for a woman, again, everybody's different, but typically it'd be anything between 5 and 10 milligrams of testosterone a week. And then the estradiol would be, it all really depends on where they're at. Let's say if you had them doing 1 milligram a day, the way that you do this is once they start the program, after about 4 weeks or so of kind of optimizing their hormones and getting everything to a certain like equilibrium, you would retest them to see where their levels are, if they're in the optimal range, which is 50% of it. And the other 50% is, hey, how are you feeling? How are you sleeping? How's your overall mental cognitive throughout the day? Get that feedback from them, and then you could adjust things accordingly. And then, a big thing I feel like in the bodybuilding community is to completely nuke your estrogen. And I cannot tell you how bad that is for a laundry list. I could write a book on it. The only time that you have to worry about having high levels or not optimal levels of estradiol is when you're really, really close to a show. Outside of that, estrogen is extremely important for both men and female.
Yeah. So the whole anti-estrogen for weeks, no end on PrEP is the most outrageous thing.
We've seen people that were on them for 6 months straight, right off the rip.
Crazy.
And
you don't even introduce that until, 3 weeks out or not.
It depends. Again, it really depends on the person. Because I do have and worked with a lot of competitors that do run higher levels of estradiol that you might need to optimize it a little bit earlier. And there's also natural supplements that can help do that as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we're going to, this is just an episode to kind of open up a little bit of the doors for people to ask more questions. And then hopefully in the future, we're going to address a little bit more questions, but I'm going to get going to training. But thank you so much.
Last leg day.
Let's go.
Nothing crazy.
Yep. All right, guys. I was supposed to actually do a cool video of my last leg day after we had that chat with Dom. But of course, I really wanted to focus on the task at hand, and I couldn't manage to do everything alone. So I just really focus on my last leg day, which I did a combination of adductors, leg extension, leg curls, some hack squat. And then I finished with some sumo squats and a little bit of glutes. So, abductors. Very quick. And then we finished too with 15 minutes of cardio. I did 30 minutes in the morning and then an extra 15 post training, which, guys, I don't do a lot of cardio compared to what I see in the industry. I don't. However, we upped the cardio now towards the last weeks, which is kind of normal. We want to squeeze in an extra few pounds of fat if we have any to lose. Really make sure that we are preparing the body to go into a carb load. So right now I am on a depletion phase. So today is my second day of low carb. I'm going to be low carb all the way until about Tuesday. And we're going to carb up starting on Wednesday. So we're going to do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to step on stage on Saturday morning. So this is actually, I think, no, we always add carbs 3 days prior. So I'm excited. I'm just excited to eat. I'm excited to do all of this. I really do love competing. I go through a lot of ups and downs. And again, guys, I think that the reason I came to the realization that I can do this a little longer is because this is the first time that I really experienced a prep without a lot of ups and downs. I mean, again, like I mentioned before, it's normal to have the days that you have more energy and the days that you have less energy. But this prep, I think the less energy percentage was just about 10%, which I can deal with that. I can deal with that. Prior to that, not to say any names, but when I was with different coaches, it was such a basic approach of low carb for days and not changing the diet for days and not really paying much attention to supplements. I would be dead at 7 weeks out and feeling so miserable to a point that I could not imagine myself competing for too long. So in my mind, I think I had this software of I'm going to stop competing soon. I'm going to stop competing soon until I actually experienced this prep. And I was like, I think I can do it a little longer if we keep on really paying attention on doing things correctly and doing things with the least amount of side effects, because side effects will come from the diet itself, from the heavy training. It's very taxing on your body in general. It will come, but you can make it as efficient and minimum this whole this whole approach and taxing in the body. You can do it as less taxing as you can. As you can see, I am low carb, guys, so my brain is already done. But anyway, I'm gonna put this video for you guys together. Again, this is a tryout. You can probably see at the beginning of the video that Dom was a little bit away from the microphone and then he was close to the microphone again. You can see a huge difference in audio. So I'm learning this. So now, from now on, whoever is speaking to you guys will have the mic close to their mouth at all times. So I can guarantee that you guys can listen to everything that we are saying pretty well. So I'm going to put a lot of emphasis in really pumping a lot of good information for you guys. So stay tuned, and probably the next time you're going to see me in New York. All right. Have a good night, guys.